Welcome everybody to our March Insights webinar. Really happy to be here with you today. And thank you for taking the time to join us. My name is Ann Cizak. I'm a senior consultant here at Great Place to Work, also a certified human resources leader here in Ontario. Like I said, I'm going to be your host for our webinar today, and it's really a conversation between a few leadership pros, and just to give our participants today, our audience today, some of their insights from the work that they've been doing. Before we start, just a few things to note. If you have a question, please use the Q&A, and we'll leave time at the end to respond to any of those questions. Ethan on our team is behind the scenes and will be supporting us today, so thank you for that, Ethan. So the theme for our webinars this year is the Great Place to Work effect, and I'm going to go into detail about that in just a couple minutes. Today is actually the third in our series, but it's okay if you're new to us. You don't have to attend these in sequence or watch them in sequence. Excuse me. It all fits together. And today we're talking about listening. So this is a leader behavior we're going to talk all about, and it's turning employee voice into engagement. That is what we're going to be talking about. Excuse me. So a great place to work. So our organization is a great place to work. But what is a great place to work? So a great place to work isn't defined by perks or slogans. It's really defined by how people experience their workplace every day, right? Whether they feel trusted, included, proud of what they do, and confident in where the organization is headed. When those elements are strong, something really powerful happens, and engagement rises, innovation accelerates, retention improves, and customers notice. And when customers notice, organizations perform better consistently. I'm pleased today to be joined by Kinsey Christopoulos, a Canadian organizational effectiveness leader at EY, a global professional service organization, and Becky Ray, HR people and compensation at TULLOCH, a Canadian multidisciplinary consulting firm focusing on engineering, planning, surveying, and environment. So really happy to have the two of you with us today. We're going to get to our panelists and have a conversation in just a minute. But like I said, we're focusing on the Great Place to Work effect. And so I wanted to go a little bit deeper into that. So what is it? What is the Great Place to Work effect? Why are we talking about it? Well, it's the measurable impact that trust, leadership, and workplace culture have on business performance, employee well-being, and long-term sustainability. So you can see here on our slides, this will be in the resources with the webinar if you're curious. But you can see here, great starts with leadership, right? We've probably all heard the expression, people don't leave organizations, they leave leaders. Well, great starts with leadership. Why? Because leadership experience. Experience shapes culture, and culture drives performance. So here we have the Great Place to Work effect really built out. Leadership, it great starts with leadership. And we have identified 9 what we call high trust leader behaviors. Today, we're talking about listening. You can see the other ones there, and you can probably guess we're going to be talking about the rest of them throughout the year. So today, again, we're talking about listening. We also will get into speaking, developing, inspiring, thanking, sharing, celebrating, hiring, and caring. So those are the 9 high trust leader behaviors. So great starts with leadership, leader shape experience. So experience, that is where we look at trust, pride, camaraderie, and for all. So what kind of experience are people having at work every day? Do they trust the people that they work for? Do they take pride in the work that they do? Do they enjoy the people that they work with? And also, is that experience consistent for everyone? Is everyone having a consistently good experience? And then when that happens, experience shapes culture. And I think, as HR pros and leaders, we talk about culture a lot. What is culture? I like to look at culture as an outcome. It's an outcome of the behaviors that we reward, encourage, ignore. It's the norms and traditions in an organization. It's how work gets done around here. And some organizations will define that as collaboration, innovation, agility, opportunity, belonging, well-being. So organizations will define culture. It could be a current culture or aspirational culture. And then it's really looking at how that culture impacts performance. And in your own organization, I'm sure that you have metrics that you track. Is it profitability, productivity, efficiency, customer satisfaction, social impact, market resilience, talent acquisition, retention? So this is true for whether you're a for-profit, nonprofit, or charitable organization. all organizations are looking at ultimately the performance and their ability to meet the expectations of their customers and their shareholders, their stakeholders. So again, great starts with leadership. So let's really get into our first our first leader behavior around listening. But before we do that, I'd like to do a poll, just get a sense of where people are at in respect to a specific question. So in your organization, how confident are you that employees feel safe speaking up? We're going to do the poll right now. We're going to come back to these results in a little bit. Okay, so in your organization, how confident are you that employees feel safe speaking up? We'll just give it a minute or two, just let everybody have a chance to respond. You can only pick one. So let's see. Okay. Just see if we get a few more participants here. Go. Okay. Okay. So we are going to, I'm going to share those results and we're going to come back to that in just a minute. So we can see 11% said very confident, 56% said not very, or somewhat confident, and then 33% said not very confident at all. So again, we're going to come back to that when we talk about listening. So now to our panelists. So Kinsey and Becky, this is where we're going to start having a conversation about what your organizations do when it comes to listening. So my first question, again, conversation, is how do you or your organization define listening? So Kinsey, I'm going to start with you. How would listening be defined in your organization?
Listening is so many different things. It's not a one size fits all check the box exercise. We span across Canada. We have multiple generations that are part of our workforce. We have diverse skills, backgrounds, thoughts, experiences. So listening kind of has to be done in so many different ways to hear the different voices that we have within EY. It's an ongoing conversation. We want to know what people are experiencing, the moments that really shape their career and how we're supporting them in that. So it's formalized through our EY People Pulse, which is a survey that's twice a year. We have the Great Places to Work survey we do as well. And then we have other not so structured, formalized ways to get people's feedback, whether that's a town hall, a focus group, one-on-one conversations, anonymous upward feedback to our leadership about things that are happening. So many different ways to find out how people are feeling and getting the pulse of how people are doing within their careers. And that starts before they even join EY to after they're long gone from EY. We do look like that onboarding when people are joining us. How does that go? And even when people leave, we still want to know, how did you feel when you were here? Or what are things that we can do better? So it's not a one-time thing. It's a continual
Yeah,
conversation we have with our people.
for sure, for sure. And Becky, how would you define listening? And what does it look like?
So yeah, so for us at TULLOCH, I would definitely define it as a successful and engaged workforce. Um, so the more engaged our staff are in the work that they do, the tasks that they carry out, very much so it's just they're able to share their creativity, their thoughts, their feedback on things, and getting that information from our employees every step of the way. Just to mirror what Kinsey said as well. So for us, it's just that opportunity that we can engage people regardless of where they work, the tasks that they do and the work that they do, and regardless of kind of what their job is within our organization. We want to have that open feedback, that open communication from all of our employees, from our senior leadership team, our team leads, managers, and things like that, but all the way down to every single contributing member of our organization.
Okay. And I'll just, so our CEO, Michael Bush, has said that listening, well, I'm going to go back. I'm going to date myself a little bit, but I know when I was sort of starting out in my career, and went to sessions to teach us about how to listen, it was really about body language, right? Like, don't cross your arms, don't lean back, don't, like it was really about that was the behaviors associated with listening, which interesting. But what I'm hearing from you is it's really more about how are we hearing? And then there's listening, hearing, like we could certainly talk about that, but it's not about the body language, right? Like I think that's really, fortunately, that's sort of gone away as organizations have developed, as we as a society have developed. Listening is not about making eye contact and not crossing your arms or not uh, those kinds of things. And Michael Bush talked about listening as, listening to somebody with the view that you could change your mind, you could change your opinion. And so, in our conversation today, it's how do we as organizations listen to people in that we might change something, right? Because that's always an opportunity. And if we're talking to employees regularly, there's that opportunity to potentially, change something that we're doing. So I'm going to go back to both of you because you both mentioned sort of briefly about the how. Like, how do we hear from people, and how do we hear from people? Becky, I'm going to start with you on this particular question. How do we hear from people who aren't necessarily at a desk, right, or online, or because I know some of your employees. Maybe you can tell our audience about some of the roles that your employees have, and that they're not maybe as accessible as others. So I'll stop. That was a long question. Becky, share with us how you ensure that you can hear from everybody.
Yeah, for sure. So at TULLOCH, we're set up, we have 16 different offices across Ontario and Alberta. So we're spread out by design already. Um, and a lot of those offices, I physically set foot in very few of them just because of where they are in Ontario or in Alberta. I'm coming to you from Huntsville, Ontario today. So for us, by design, we're spread out just with our various different offices. But when it comes to our employees and the work that they do, a lot of our employees are out in the field. Um, like Anne mentioned, we're engineering and surveying firm. So our employees are out there, they're doing those surveys, they're getting those calculations for, bridges and buildings and things like that. They're bringing that back to our designers in the office and our PMs in the office to do their portion of the work. So a lot of our employees don't maybe even step foot in an office on a regular basis just because of where they work, the jobs that they do, and the roles that they have as well. So for us, really what we like to kind of highlight and enforce is have as many different touch points as you possibly can with those employees. So when our employees start, to take it to onboarding, we've set up and we've kind of rehauled our onboarding process in the last couple of years, but we set up various different touch points, especially for those employees who are at a distance or don't work in the same office as, say, HR, payroll, IT, just those basic kind of touch points that everybody needs to say, here's the person you go to when these things come up. This is who you go to for payroll, which as someone who is on the payroll team, I often say that's the most important thing. You want to be paid at the end of the day. So having those touch points and things like that just built into that onboarding process sets the tone right from the beginning that, here are the people you need to know, and they're here to support you regardless of where you are. But another big thing for us is to have as many things virtual as possible. We host internal lunch and learns throughout the year. So anybody can join those from wherever they are. It's a great opportunity for our employees to kind of showcase their role, their job, the projects that they're working on. So not only can, other employees learn more about them and their role and that sort of thing, but it also just gives a voice that they can share kind of their everyday with employees. And it is virtual. We record them as well, so if you can't come because of client obligations, you can always watch it later, those sorts of things. But we also have events throughout the year as well that are just virtual. We have an annual euchre tournament, which is a big thing for us. We love our euchre here at TULLOCH. But we also have our 35th anniversary coming up next week. And while a portion of it is going to be in the office, bringing people together, because that's an important part as well, to bring people physically together in person, our programming is going to be virtual so that you can join from wherever you are. So for us, it's very important that we're just making sure it's not all in person.
Hmm.
It's virtual. We're bringing people in as much as we possibly can, and just highlighting that and recognizing, hey, our most important people are out in the field, putting in the work, rain, shine, snow, whatever the case may be. How can we make sure that they are still being included in all these things that we're doing, and you're not just
Hmm.
getting that benefit because you're in an office?
Awesome, thanks. So, Kinsey, I'm going to turn to you now. You mentioned in your intro talk, you talked about really continuous listening, right? From even before you start until even after, I'll say your alumni, right? You really want to understand that beginning to end of the employee relationship. So talk to us a little bit more about, some of the maybe some of the programs that are unique to EY, and just maybe a couple that stand out around really how to hear from people. Because now, and sorry, I should also ask you to explain a little bit more about how your organization is structured, because I know you're probably across Canada as well, right?
We are. We have offices across Canada. Some people are at client site. Some people are in office. So similar to Becky, you have to find different ways to hear what people have to say. And as I mentioned, some are through formalized survey. Like when someone joins us, there's a survey at 30, 60, 90 days, right? Just to make sure, how are you doing? How do you feel you're fitting into the culture? How's that onboarding going for you? Is there something we're missing that we really need to support you with? Well, you're here. And we have so many opportunities to hear what our people have to say. I will say one thing that probably makes us a bit unique is we have a well-being leader. So the well-being leader was named about 2 years ago, and she's come in to really focus on how do we increase the well-being of our people? What can we do to support them to really feel that they have that sense of belonging, they feel safe, that they feel that we're creating an environment of trust. And as part of that, they actually have well-being champions. So people sign up and it's you raise your hand, and they meet about once every couple months and come together and talk about different ways we can support our people's well-being, whether it's financial, social, emotional, physical. Really, what can we do to be supporting our people in different ways that we're not necessarily, I guess, we don't know much about right now. And one of those that came up was financial, right? A lot of people
Mm,
going through financial strain right
hmm.
now. So we did a whole series on financials, whether it's how do I save, or what are the opportunity, or what are the benefits that we have at EY that could support me in my financials? How do I set up a budget? So many different ways to support our people. But I would say kind of that well-being leader is really supporting and driving ways to listen to what people are saying from a well-being perspective. And I would say that's a little different because I don't know that many places that actually have a well-being leader focused on that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to approach it, and thinking about listening as part of well-being, right?
Yeah.
And how can we know what is going on with people to address their well-being if we're not listening, if we're not gathering that feedback through, again, whether that's a formalized survey, whether that's having a one-on-one with your leader, what that looks like in each organization. So yeah, that's a really interesting take on that. Sure, thank you for sharing. Um, what I want to talk about now is, so at Great Place to Work, we look at collaboration, and listening is part of that, where collaboration is involving people in decisions and seeking and responding to suggestions and ideas. So there's very much a listening component of that, right, where we're listening for those ideas. So just curious, I want to talk about leadership now, because we're talking about listening as a leader behavior. So how would you, and Kinsey, I'll start with you first. How would you define sort of collaboration um, by leaders and listening as a leader beyond sort of like working well together? How does that show up with your leaders?
So I will point out that we have all in leadership expectations that everyone's expected to be a leader at EY.
Okay.
And so that when we talk about our all in leadership expectations, it's create value, inspire confidence, and fuel growth. And of course, the expectations of each individual differs from when someone might be starting their career to if they're actually
Mhm.
in a leadership position
Okay.
within the firm. But we do expect everyone to exhibit the all in leadership expectations because it is about being collaborative. It is about co creating. We need to hear the different voices and build from the ground up. If something
Mhm.
is created and we don't hear the voices of our people, then we don't know if it's hitting the mark, right? So, how are
Right.
we finding those ways to involve people up front and really get the different the different inputs from across the firm before we develop or create something, or before we change something, whether it's a benefit or something else. So it is about collaboration. We do really focus on effective teaming. Effective teaming is big at EY. Majority of the work we do is usually with a team of individuals, whether it's meeting the client at an engagement site or working on site. You're working with a team of individuals, and collaboration is key because that leads to effective communication. It leads to trust. It leads to your ability to be able to deliver on what the client needs. So we do focus a lot on how do we bring these teams together? How do we create effective norms? How do we get them focused on what they need to do? And everyone's singing to the same song sheet. Like they have that
Mm-hmm.
purpose, they have that vision, and they're kind of co-creating everything together. And the leaders will have to role model that, right? What are they doing to
Right.
make sure that they're creating that open environment for people to feel that they have a seat at the table and that they can share and that their voice will be more than listened to, it will be heard.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to just go back to what you talked about, that all in leaders, because we're not necessarily just talking about people leadership, right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
how are we all leading in our roles? How are we all leaders? So Becky, I'll turn to you and maybe share a little bit about how your organization develops leaders at all levels, but in terms of that skill of listening and collaboration, can you share with us?
Yeah, very similar philosophy over here at TULLOCH. We also have a very everybody's a leader mentality, and we have an internal leadership training that everybody's invited to take part in, and just that idea that you are a leader within your role. So, very interesting that it's a very similar philosophy between the two companies. So for us. Absolutely. That is, regardless of the role that you have at TULLOCH, our expectation is that you are a leader within that. So, with your teams, with your coworkers, in your offices, you're looking out and you're caring for, your coworkers, your employees around you. So, that's kind of just built into everything. And one of our main recruitment philosophies going along with that is that we hire character and we train skill.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's very important that we have, and we hire the people who embody our culture, embody that leadership. The dream is always that you get both, but sometimes the character is there and the skills need a little bit of development. So, kind of we start that very much from the get go, and it's a mentality that's built into our culture. Um, when it comes to, team leads and managers and things like that in our company, we have one-on-one coaching training and things like that to help progress them as well. Um, we have very gifted project managers here at TULLOCH that excellent and have all that skill on the technical side of things, and we want to develop into those roles of being a people leader as well. So they get the opportunity to sit down with a member of our senior leadership team, bring that one-to-one coaching all the way through. So not only are we expecting and we want everybody to be a leader within their role, we're also paying close attention to the people who are those people leaders, to bring them as along as well. Because the big thing that it comes down to is with listening with anything is trust. So we
Mm-hmm.
want to make sure that we are having that characteristic carried out with all the employees at TULLOCH, but especially with our people leaders.
Nice. And so what I'm hearing from both of you, and for those on the call today, it's this is a skill for everybody, right? And it's not something maybe that we know how to do in terms of listening and feedback and those kinds of things. So it's not necessarily just looking at people leaders um, with this skill. It's how do we ensure that everybody has the opportunity to develop this again, regardless of their level. So yeah, just thank you for sharing that. It's interesting that it's a similarity between both of your organizations, that it's a very focused, it's intentional, that we look at everybody as a leader, and we start from day one. What I'm going to do now is just I have another poll, and it's really just it's going to be around collaboration. So just to get a sense of again the folks that are here today. So we're just going to pull up that poll, and we're going to see about which leadership skills would most improve collaboration. There we go. Which leadership skill would most improve collaboration in your organization? So there's listening, curiosity, trust building, and follow through. We've heard that. Decision clarity and alignment, and managing conflict constructively. So just again, getting a sense from the folks that are with us today, what would most improve collaboration in your organization? I'll just give people a minute to respond. Okay, well, it's looking like okay. Oh, here we go. It's all coming fast and furious. Okay. Just another minute here. Okay. So far out in the lead is trust building and follow through. Okay. So I'm just going to end that poll and I'm going to share the results. So we see that listening and curiosity is 26%. Trust building and follow through is 51%. So our big winner there, decision clarity and alignment at 17, and managing conflict constructively at 6. So you both identified trust. And there's also that follow through piece. And that's really important when we look at being a great place to work. And when you think about sharing ideas, if somebody gives you an idea and you don't do anything with it, then they're not going to do it again, right? Because it might not feel safe, which is actually going to bring me up into our next question, if you will, or next topic that I wanted to talk about. And that's about the importance of psychological safety. So we talked about the importance of hearing from people, listening to people. And I think in some organizations, leaders will say, well, we just expect people to speak up, right? That's just an expectation of people working here, is to speak up. But let's talk about psychological safety, because asking somebody to speak up is maybe not as easy as it sounds. So, Kinsey, I'll start with you. Just, from a psychological safety, you mentioned you have the leader of well-being, whether that falls under their purview. When you think about psychological safety in your organization or building that, tell us about EY's perspective on that.
Yeah, and it does fall under the well-being leaders purview. It also falls under DEI because we're very much about inclusiveness and how do we make sure that everyone feels that they're included within the firm, whether that's through a business resource group where people come together, or it's again finding other ways to hear from our people. Psychological safety is what makes listening possible. If people didn't feel that we were doing something with what we heard from them, then to
Yep.
your point, they would no longer be openly sharing with us. And they might feel embarrassed to actually say something, or they won't even ask for it or ask for support or raise a hand if they need help. So we did actually create this model called SAFE, and it's speak up. So make sure that voices are heard, ask for help, normalize failure. So F is failure, but finding ways to normalize it. Learning is part of making mistakes is part of learning, right? So how do we make sure we are learning when we make those mistakes and we're finding better ways to do it in the future? And then it's about expressing yourself, making sure that again, you are putting your hand up when you need help. So we do talk a lot about safe within the firm to kind of create that psychological safety within our people. But it does show up in so many different ways. And it is about being curious. It's asking those better questions. It's not being defensive. We look for healthy conflict. We want healthy conflict, right? We want debate. That will only lead to better results for us as a firm and to meet the needs of the client. So how do we put those channels in place? How do we put those things in out there to make sure people feel that yes, we want to hear, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything that someone wants to say, because we know a psychological safe environment is very important, and that's the only way we can actually truly hear what you have to say to us. So how do we create those open lines of communication, and then that allows us to actually make a difference, right? To actually truly
Absolutely.
act on some of those things that are heard.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go back again. It sounds like your organization is very intentional about
Yeah.
things. You're intentional in how you're listening. You're intentional around psychological safety. So Becky, tell us about TULLOCH. How does psychological safety show up at your organization?
Yeah, so I mean, it's probably the most important thing. Everybody should be able to come to work, feel safe in their role with the people around them, but also to be their most authentic self. And that's a big thing at any organization, but especially for us, we want employees to be able to come to work, to show up, to not have to, put on a mask and things like that, to be their most authentic self with themselves and their coworkers as well. So, um, when people are feeling more, safe and comfortable at an organization, then they're going to be more willing to share their ideas, share their creativity, and just to speak up. But as well, when they feel safe and there's trust between, either the individual or the team and the culture of the company, um, they're going to be able to bring things that maybe, the bad and the not so good and those kind of things as well. So for us, yeah, it's very important that we create that sense of belonging within our company, within our culture, with our different offices. Um, and again, we're doing that by building out touch points, opportunities to connect, uh, all those sorts of things, so that everybody can feel connected, can feel comfortable, and just build that trust within our organization.
Awesome. And I'm going to just touch on something that you mentioned about outcomes, right? So, and you both spoke about this, but where if people do not feel safe to speak up, there's going to be a direct impact on whether it's safety. Something might get missed. Something might happen as a result of somebody not bringing something forward about safety. But the innovation piece and the Great Place to Work research has shown, that innovation will flourish. So there's for the folks on the line today, really looking at the importance of psychological safety in listening to people and hearing what people have to say. Because if somebody speaks up once and there are negative repercussions from that, they're not going to do it again. And then again, that could have an impact on safety. That can have an impact on customer and have just a whole domino effect. So we can't just ask people to speak up without it feeling safe, right? So yeah, thank you both for sharing that. I wanted to talk also a little bit more about reaching people where they're at. And we talk about encouraging people to speak up. But how do we do that? How do we hear from voices who think, yeah, everything's great, I don't have anything to share? So Kinsey, I'm going to ask you this one first. How do you ensure that you are genuinely hearing from everybody?
And I think that goes back to the fact that it's a multifaceted approach, right? It's not just a one size
Yeah.
fits all for listening. Because you're right, like not everyone participates in the surveys that are sent out twice a year. So we know we're not hearing from everyone. We have a great sample size and we're really happy about that, but we know there's still people that aren't out there that we're listening to. So it also goes back, like, I know Becky mentioned coaching. It's coaching our leaders on listening to our
Mhm.
people and making sure that you are asking questions. So whether you're meeting them one on one or whether you have a group of individuals together, sometimes you might have someone a little more quiet or someone who maybe it's starting their career and they're not necessarily going to speak out. What are you doing to draw upon them to make sure that it's not just, yeah, it's okay, and it's really not. So it's asking, like, are you okay? Are there things we can do differently? Are there things we need to change? It's really kind of sometimes finding those voices that are a little more hesitant to share where we're going to get our most learning. It's not the loudest voices we want to
Mm.
hear all the time. It's some of those that might not be willing to share quite as much. But it's finding different outlets to get them to share. And again, if everything's okay, great. We are very happy with that. But we know that's not always the case. I don't want someone coming and saying, yeah, yeah, all's good. And we know underlying it's not. So it's just finding maybe it's a more intimate way to understand how someone's truly feeling, but it is looking at listening from so many different perspectives because
Mhm.
you're not always going to get it from a survey.
And so I'm just going to actually, I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but I'm just going to ask because right now there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. And, Kinsey, you talked about, financial well-being certainly is part of that, but there's just a lot going on in people's lives. And, I think that a lot of times we think organizationally, we want to hear from people about the business, right? Like, what ideas can you share? What have you heard from customers? How can we make the business? But in a time like right now, how are you sort of checking in with people? How are you encouraging leaders to maybe check in a little bit more or to hear what people are thinking and feeling from a personal perspective? So Becky, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything that you're doing maybe differently now than maybe you were, I don't know, a year ago or even 6 months ago?
Yeah, I think for us, it would just be and I brought it up already a couple times, but just having those continual touch bases.
Yeah.
And now for me personally, I would rather have, a Teams call, a phone call with somebody over an email.
Okay.
It's just a nicer way to connect with people, and I find
Mhm.
that that's something that I have been doing more and more. Um, just personally, I don't know if anybody else is doing that at TULLOCH, but personally, just for myself, having those touch points with people, either being like a Teams call, like I said, or a phone call, if I know that they're maybe not going to be on Teams and things like that. Because for me, having a verbal conversation or a video face to face, there's just so much more room that you can kind of check in with people. You can see those different things. You have that opportunity to just make those connections, and you can check in on those things. And for our leaders, we would also, the expectation would be is like, you're keeping an eye out for your employees. One of our
Mhm.
main philosophies is, we want to create an organization where everybody loves their job, but the more important part for this is where their leaders care for them.
Mhm.
Um, so if you're noticing that an employee is, not joining a Teams, a group meeting with their camera on, or they're maybe not engaging as much maybe in a Teams chat, because again, we're very spread out. Um, it's checking in to say, hey, is everything okay? And it might be, maybe they're having an off day, they don't want to be on the call with their camera on or whatever. But listening isn't just waiting for the employee to come to you to say, hey, I have this issue, or I have this question, or this idea or suggestion. It's picking up on those little things to say, hey, I've noticed that you're not as engaged as you once were. Is
Mhm.
anything happening? Maybe there
Mhm.
is a lot of pressure happening at home or with finances, things like that. Or maybe there's an underlying, work concern that we can work through. So I think the more opportunity that you have to have touch points with people, especially like as interactive as possible with those touch points through phone calls and Teams and things like that, you're able to pick up on those things, and then that's where
Mhm.
the true listening comes in, is because
Right.
it's in the silent listening, I guess, of what
Yeah.
employees are showing you. And then they'll have trust that their supervisor, their manager, whoever is noticing, will reach out
Mm.
and hopefully be able to start those conversations to see kind of what the root of the issue is.
Yeah. Okay. And Kinsey, anything different that your organization is doing, or is it
We
just a continuous? Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it is the continuous touch points.
Yeah.
And when Becky mentioned we have this thing called everyday caring, right? So it's true. Like, how are we truly showing we care for our people? Because you're right, it's not necessarily what someone's going to say. It's that unspoken thing that might be happening that you notice because you know them really well, right? You've built that trusting relationship. You have that psychological safety. And for the past week, like they're off camera, or they're walking down, maybe it's a hall with their head down a little lower. It's those unspoken things that sometimes you want your leaders to notice and really pat someone on the shoulder, say, hey, what can we do to help you? There's
Mhm.
so many things out there to really support people. So how can we make sure that you are bringing your best self to work and you're engaged, and how do we get you through whatever you might be going through at this moment in time?
Yeah. I love that you both highlighted something we hadn't even really, I hadn't really thought about through this, and that's that unspoken listening. Right? It's yes, we have all of these channels and all of these ways that we can encourage people to share. But sometimes it's really that what we're not hearing, what we're not seeing, and then we can really pick up on it from there. We've got I don't see any questions in the Q&A, so we're just going to keep talking. We've got about 5 minutes left. But what I really would like from both of you, as in your role, what your experience based on all of that, what is one practice that you would recommend to somebody watching today, that could help them improve listening in their organization, listening or collaboration? Kinsey, I'll start with you. What's one thing and again, the people who attend our webinars are so awesome. Like, we've got small organizations, big organizations, and everything in between. So what is one thing that you could recommend if somebody's really starting to think intentionally about listening? What's one thing you think they could do?
Can I say two things? One is
Sure.
having a
Yeah.
multifaceted approach, like I said, to
Okay.
listening, right? It's not just a survey
Yeah.
that you're sending out, it's finding different ways to hear what people have to say. And I mean, we look at it holistically like a circle. Like, what are all these things we're doing to actually hear from our people? And what are those where are those touch points that we really know we want to hear from them?
Mhm.
So having that holistic approach to listening. And then the other thing I would say is actually do something with what you're getting because the listening will fall flat. It is just
Mm.
listening and not actually hearing what people have to say if you do nothing with it. So it's saying that you said, therefore we did. And sometimes it's not we did because you said, because we can't do anything, but explain why you can't. So it's always making sure
Right.
that there's follow through and follow up when you are putting those channels in place.
Yeah, awesome. And Becky, how about you? What's one thing that you could recommend to somebody?
I would just say, you know, build connection as proactively and as often as possible. Um, so if you have employees who are working, yeah, at home or in different offices or across Canada or anything like that, find ways to get to know them, build connection, build that trust, and as frequently as you can. And then depending on your role, you might not talk with a lot of these people, but for my role, I have the opportunity that I do get to speak with people pretty regularly, just about various things. So, um, but that's something that I've kind of made a point of in my career is just to build connections with people regardless of where they are. And making my messages as personalized as possible so that they
Mhm.
feel or hopefully know that I took the few extra minutes to, personalize an email to them. It wasn't just a mass produced one, those sorts of things. Because I think the more connection that you build with your employees, with your coworkers, with the people in your organization, the more trust, camaraderie, collaboration, all those things are going
Mhm.
to follow, and it just adds to your company culture.
For sure. And I think, what you said, Kinsey, as well, is so important about do something, right? Like we can listen, we can gather, but if we don't do something, you're right. If and it's like I was talking about when if someone spoke up and it wasn't a good experience, they're not going to do it again. If you've asked me for feedback and I've given my feedback and then nothing happens, then I might not think it's a useful exercise and do it again. And to your point, doesn't mean because you make a suggestion for change that it's going to happen. Like we have to manage expectations as well. But it's getting back to people, and anybody who knows me knows one of my favorite expressions is what gets recognized gets repeated, right? So if we want to recognize people for the behavior and the bringing ideas forward and they're bringing their suggestions or getting involved, it will be repeated. But the opposite is true. What doesn't get recognized probably won't get repeated. So really important. Again, whether it's a survey, thanking people for taking the time, like you said, Kinsey, here's what you said, here's what we did, or here's what we're going to do. So important to keep people updated and throughout the year. And I just love this whole conversation. We're really talking about continuous. Both of your organizations have recognized the impact and the power of making this a continuous process. It's not we're going to listen to you once a year. It's we want to hear from you, and our leaders are going to check in with people, and organizationally we're going to check in with people because that makes us better. And research shows that innovation will flourish. And again, if you're looking from a performance perspective, what's our retention like? What's our all of those different metrics that we look at, and how does this, it's funny, we're talking about listening, but there's so many other things. And Becky, you talked about connection. We've talked about safety, we've talked about all of the different resources. So it's not just about listening, it's about caring, right? I heard that as well. So I think we're almost at time, but we've covered a lot of ground today. And I want to thank both of you for being here today and sharing what you're doing, because there's so much power, I think, in hearing what other organizations are doing and not copying it necessarily, but really learning what our other organizations do. And then how can we apply that in our workplace? Um, I want to go back to our first poll where we asked, in your organization, how confident are you that employees feel safe speaking up? And it wasn't 100% that people said that people felt confident. So, you know, um, both of you have talked a lot about psychological safety, building that trust. So that may be an opportunity for some organizations. Ethan has posted some resources on the Great Place to Work Effect, and hope you join us every month. We're going to be doing these webinars on the Great Place to Work Effect. And also, if you're looking for data, you're looking for those checkpoints, reach out to Great Place to Work. We can certainly help you with that. Now, also, if you're going to be coming back in April, we are partnering with Indeed. And we're going to shed some light on the multi-generational workforce, data-driven strategies that work. And this is actually, it's really, we're creating a narrative here. Like throughout the year, Kinsey, you talked about, listening, and maybe somebody's new in their career, right? How do we listen to them? So how do we, and so I think this multi-generational workforce data, it's all related to what we've been talking about today around listening and caring, collaborating, and so many good things. So again, want to thank Kinsey, Becky. If you're interested in connecting with both of them, you can find them on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'd be happy to share more about what they're all the great things that they're doing. And again, want to thank everybody for participating today, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.